It is 100% preventable, and yet it remains one of the most heinous crimes in our society: child abuse. Coming up on Kentucky Outlook, as the nation recognizes April as Child Abuse Prevention Month, we take a look at those in the trenches and find out more about what's being done in our region to prevent child abuse. And if it's springtime, you know what that means. The Soki Book Fest is just around the corner. We're going to have a preview. All that and more next on Kentucky Outlook. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Kentucky Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb. We're glad you joined us. Whether you know it or not, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And unless you're affected by this, you probably don't think much about it. But you know, you can look at the statistics, but in my opinion, one child being abused is way too many. We're going to talk about that as we welcome to the program Lynn Hulsey. She is the director of the Family Enrichment Center. Thanks for being here, Lynn.
Thank you.
In addition, we are joined by, and I promised her I'd get her name right, Denise Lambrianou. And not only do you work at the Family Enrichment Center, but you also are an adoptive parent of four, count them, 4 young men. And so to that, hats off. And we want to talk a little bit about that. But when we talk about child abuse, what do we mean by that? I mean, it's easy to think about, you know, physical abuse, but there's other kinds of abuse too.
There's emotional abuse and sexual abuse and neglect. Those are all forms of child abuse.
And when we talk about the statistics in our area, as I alluded to, one child being abused, that's way too many.
Excellent.
But do we have a problem here in this area?
We do. As a matter of fact, over the past year, the number even increased more, but there's more than 1,200 children last year that were confirmed to have been abused or neglected. So if you think about that, that would fill 2 high schools here, you know, or one big high school, but that's startling to me because we're only talking 10 counties. So 1,200, more than 1,200. And that doesn't count the calls that families were referred for services. They didn't meet the criteria. So these children actually had been abused and neglected.
Let's talk about that, because note how she put the emphasis on confirmed cases of child abuse, those that met the criteria. It's hard to believe that we have to have criteria to determine if someone's being abused, but what are we talking about when we say confirmed?
You know, there are a lot of times people will make calls, and in Kentucky we're all mandatory reporters of child abuse. We don't have to have proof that we feel like a child is being harmed, but we are required, if we suspect, that we make that call.
Stop right there before you go any further so our audience can grasp that. So really what you're saying is, if you suspect maybe a neighbor, a loved one, a relative, that maybe there's some abuse taking place in that household, you have an obligation as a human being, as a citizen.
And by law, you're legally obligated to.
Okay.
Report.
And you don't have to have proof necessarily.
And I think that's the kind of freeing thing for people, is you can actually report anonymously and you don't have to have proof. It's their role to investigate, not yours.
Okay. All right. So I stopped you there, but so there's a suspect, right? You suspect that something might be going on. You make the call. Then what?
You do, and then there's a process that they go through. There's an intake person, and they will get all the information, and then they determine if the family is just struggling and needs some support, then they'll recommend some support services. But if it is a critical need and they feel like the child is really at danger, then they have a certain amount of time that they have to go and investigate.
Denise, as we mentioned in the introduction, you adopted 4 children. You work at the Family Enrichment Center. Is that how you came in contact with seeing the need?
I was actually working in another agency during 2 of our adoptions. So, you know, our children were adopted from foster care, and so when this position sort of came up, it was kind of like, well, it's a life that we live every day, so why not go to that? So that's what we did.
And so, and then you have a stepson, so you actually have 5 young boys.
5 sons,
so
yes.
Ages 17, 13, 11, and 8 are
Yes.
the ages of the young men that you adopted.
Yes.
Now, they were victims of child abuse.
Right. Our 2 oldest children were actually 8 and 4 when they came to live with us, and they were living, I believe the charges finally came down to be like neglect. just living in really deplorable conditions. So, they came to live with us, and, things unfortunately didn't work out, that they got to go back home, but fortunately for us, they worked out to where we could adopt them. Now, our two youngest ones were infants, so they really don't remember much before then. We're really all they've ever known. So.
Okay, but what you're getting at is that they don't remember much, the two younger ones, but the two older ones probably do.
The two older ones do. They do remember.
And so
their
how has
life.
that affected who they are as human beings?
Remarkably, I think they've come through it very well. I mean, there are still some things that might trigger memories. One son actually likes to be very neat and clean because he was so used to the kind of conditions he lived in. One son sometimes still struggles with some food issues, just not knowing if there's going to be enough to eat, even though there's enough food in the house. So, we had to help him with that. And even though he was 4 at the time, here it is all these years later, and it's still that something ingrained in him that it's a survival mode. So, but I think for the most part, we've had really good success, and they've come out the other side really well.
So we have a success story here.
I think
We
it's
have
a
children
success
who are in
story.
an abused and neglected situation come to a loving home where there's plenty of food
There's
and
plenty of
plenty
food.
of stuff, and you just have to kind of work through some
You
of
do.
those things.
You
And
do.
so in your household, you openly discuss, you can say to this child, there's plenty of food, you don't have to.
We do. It's just gentle reminders saying, Mom and Dad's going to take care of you. We promise, that you will never go without again. If that means that Mike and I wouldn't have anything, we're going to make sure you eat. So, but it's still that reassuring factor that he needs to know that everything's going to be okay.
So this is one happy success story. We have 1,200 children who were abused in our region, in the 10-county area. Not everyone has a happy success story.
No, unfortunately, but Denise is a great example of an intervention.
Right.
Tell me what that means.
There's so many things that we can all do. Fostering, Denise recruits foster and adoptive parents for our agency. That's her role. And because she's done that, she's really well suited for that position. So I don't think, sometimes people think about that being a way that you can help a child, but providing them a loving, stable home is really cool.
Very, yes, and what a beautiful gift to be able to give. So if someone's watching this program and maybe they can't have children and they've thought about fostering children, that's kind of a scary scenario to enter. I mean, I have to say, because I know several of my colleagues who have done just that. Scary, beautiful, and rewarding, I should add. So, when you become a foster parent, you basically have to get the approval, right? How does that work?
You do. There's a process that you have to go through. In the state of Kentucky, you have to complete what's called MAP classes. And that's an 11-week program that you go through with a social worker or a resource trainer like myself. And, we go over all the different kind of scenarios that kids are coming from. What kind of abuse have they suffered? What does that mean? And then going through that, you go through like background checks and, all this stuff.
Your
We're going to
house
find out
has to be
everything.
checked. Yeah, everything
everything
has to be looked at.
And then so once that's done and you're approved, then they start placing children in your home. And
But they can call you, right, today? Like if you're approved, they can call you today and
Yes.
say, I've got 2 children that are in need.
that's kind of
And
like
you
how
have to
our
be
story
ready.
started. Yes,
Is
we
it?
were approved on a Wednesday, and on Friday she called and said, we have a child that we'd like to place with you.
There you go.
And there you go. And some days you're approved that day and you get a child that day. So.
Now, that shows a real need. What were you going to say?
Yeah, there are more than 700 kids in out-of-home care in Kentucky that are waiting for homes, so permanent homes. Yeah.
Okay, but by law, we talked at the beginning about by law you have an obligation if you suspect that some abuse might be taking place to a child in the state of Kentucky, you have an obligation. You get that call. Not everyone is as lucky as this, but you have to then do what? Okay, you can step aside, and the law comes in, takes a look.
Absolutely. I mean, you're only obligated to make that call. And a perfect example, I got an anonymous email the other day from a family who was concerned about a child that lived next, well, actually 2 little ones, 1 and 3, and the little one had bruises on his face, and they knew they were being hit with a belt. And so I called the police. So you don't always have to go the route of calling the cabinet or the 1-800 number. If you feel like there's imminent danger, you can always call the police.
Well, we talk about the law requiring us to step up and be good citizens. The law also tries very hard, from what I understand, to keep the child with the biological parent.
Yeah, that is their first and main goal, is reunification. So there, again, there's another huge process that the family has a certain length of time to do all the things that they're being asked to do by the cabinet. And then if they're not able to do that, and the goal changes to termination of parents' rights.
So there really is, it's not something that we just pluck them from the home and go. Right. And then there are efforts to try to help the parents be better parents, because from what I understand, it's a cyclical kind of thing in many ways. If a child was abused as a child, that's their normal. So when they grow up and they have to be a parent, that's all they know.
Right. It's so interesting when we teach our parenting classes that we do a family questionnaire, and that's part of the questioning is, how were you parented? How were you disciplined? And it invariably, they discipline the way they were disciplined.
Which, you know, you can't fault them for that.
No.
That's all they know. But there is intervention, there is help. And is it, in some cases, behavior modification? I mean, do you actually have to go to that step where you have to modify a certain...
You know, we do have an in-home parent education program where a lot of it is modeling and watching their behavior and then offering alternatives. But most of it is just trying to replace their negative behaviors to more nurturing, loving parenting techniques.
And it can be, you've seen it happen?
Oh, it's amazing. We pre-test them, then they have their parent education classes, and then we post-test them. So we've had parents that scored 8 on a pre-test and 24 on a post-test. So it shows you that they've gained the knowledge, and now they just have to go and practice. And we try to follow up with them to see if they get their children back. Some parents that come to us haven't lost their children yet, some have. And so it's interesting and nice to see when they actually get them back and they're able to parent better.
A success story. We're quickly running out of time. The Family Enrichment Center is located in Bowling Green. Its purpose is what?
To empower families and prevent child abuse.
To empower families and prevent child abuse. We're going to put up a telephone number if you want more information. And if you note, if you can see, our guests are wearing blue ribbons. So April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and it's the blue ribbon. And you gave me one, thank you. I will put it on for the second segment. But what are you hoping that our audience takes away from what we've just talked about?
You know, that we can all play a part in keeping children safe.
Just that simple.
Just that simple.
And you, Denise Lambrianou, who has adopted 4 formerly abused children, neglected or abused, what would you like to say?
I have to agree with Lynn. I mean, it's very small things that you can do to make a difference. And, you know, doing just that small thing is better than doing nothing. Doing
the small things better than nothing. Thank you so much. We've been talking with Denise Lambrianou, who has adopted 4 children. In addition, she works at the Family Enrichment Center, and of course the director of the Family Enrichment Center, Lynn Hulsey. Thanks so much for joining us. Now don't go away, because when we come back on Kentucky Outlook, we're going to be talking about a huge event that takes place every spring right here in Bowling Green, and now it's one of the top tourist attractions in the Commonwealth. We're talking about the Soki Book Fest. Stay with us, don't go away. All right, all you lovers of books and curious ones out there, guess what? The Southern Kentucky Festival of Books is coming to Bowling Green April 26th, and it is now one of the top-rated events in the Commonwealth. And we're so excited to have with us 3 individuals who've been working very hard behind the scenes, who you'll see out there at the Book Fest. Ashley Fowlkes is joining us. Excuse me, she is the Assistant Director of the Warren County Public Libraries. Thank you, Ashley, for being here. In addition, Kristie Lowry, who works extremely hard on the Southern Kentucky Festival of Books, and you don't see her, she's behind the scenes, but it wouldn't be possible without her. So thank you for being here. You are literary outreach coordinator with WKU, but you also are the coordinator of the Soki Book Fest.
Right.
There she is, right there, in living color. And Jennifer Bailey joins us, and Jennifer works with Barnes & Noble. She is the community outreach manager. Thank you. And Barnes & Noble is actively involved with the Soki Book Fest, too.
Yes.
Okay, so spill it. How is it that we decide, as someone's looking at the rundown for the Soki Book Fest, how is it that the authors are decided upon? How does it decided that so-and-so is going to come and not someone else? Kristie, answer that one.
Well, the partnership, of course, the members of the partnership love books, and we love authors, and we all have our dream lists of who we want to meet. Although I often say that a book festival with all of the authors I want to meet would probably not do very well, but that's okay.
You'd be there, though. Yes.
I would be there. And so we brainstorm, we decide who's attainable, first of all, and we're surprised sometimes by who is. We got Henry Winkler last year, and every year we ask a certain number of people. Stephen King, and he's always very nice in his declining, but we decided on Charlaine Harris 3 or 4 years ago, and we've asked her every year, and she finally was able to come this year.
And she will be the headliner this year.
She will be, yes.
And people might know her because of the True Blood series
Yes.
that was based on her books?
Yes, she has a series of books about Sookie Stackhouse, and HBO has the True Blood series based on it.
So what you pointed out was the logistics. In other words, if an author just so happens is going to be maybe in Nashville around the same time, then that's how a lot of that functions. Now, Jennifer, you were talking about that as well, just how the publishers now are kind of pushing some of their authors.
Yeah, over the last 16 years, we've had the opportunity to build really good relationships with the publicists of these authors, and they have started coming to us more and more saying, hey, so-and-so's on tour, can we make the Book Fest a stop for them? And we snatch them up right away.
And so, I mean, we've had some really, people don't realize the depth and the breadth of what's going to be there at the Soki Book Fest. So, we're going to tell you. Now, it's April 26th, which is a Saturday, but there are events leading up to that. So, help us with some of those, Ashley.
Well, Friday is Children's Day, and the wonderful thing about Children's Day is all day long people can come and listen to poets, authors, illustrators of books for children, all the way from preschool up through high school. We do have presentations on every hour, so school groups are welcome to come. It's a wonderfully educational day, because how often do you get to meet someone who actually penned the words or drew the illustrations in your books? And we've got people coming who are Caldecott winning artists. We've got people who have been Newbery winners, and that means a lot in the library world. And so every hour on the hour, they have a couple of choices to go and view these, not view, but participate in these discussions with these wonderful artists. And then there's times to come and do some arts and crafts things in the in-between, and then go and buy the books and get them autographed. And that is just one of the biggest treats in the world.
I have chills already. Because, we were talking the other day when I was out promoting the PBS Kids Go contest, which is also part of the Soki Book Fest. Remember your first book? Think about that. Think about the book and what an influence, to be able to feel it and to touch it and to know that it was your book. And then you're at this festival where the person who wrote that book is there and they're going to sign it. That's so amazing. So that's on April 25th.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right. Starting at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And if people want to just come who aren't school groups, if a parent wants to bring a child, feel free to come. If people want to go online and register a group, they can do that as well on our website.
Okay, and that website is?
SokiBookFest.org.
It's just that simple. We're going to put it up at the end of the segment as well. So, Kristie, this is people don't understand what it takes to bring more than 100. How many are there going to be? 100?
142 at last count.
Okay, 142 authors who converge on Bowling Green, the Carol Nicely Center, and so this is a lot of. I'm not going to call them divas, but there's a lot to putting all of this together. Take us through some of that.
There is. Well, I'm working on 2015 already and have been for the past few months, so that gives you some idea of the time frame. And as soon as this one is over, I hope to have our headliners for 2015 taken care of. And it's just a process. We start marketing heavily in January. The publishers aren't always looking as far ahead as I am, so constantly following up with publicists and authors, and we now have an online application form for authors too, so I don't know every author out there, so they can find us if we can't find them.
There you go. So give our audience a visual of when you come to the Carol Nicely Center, if you've never been to the Soki Book Fest, the Southern Kentucky Festival of Books, what do we see?
Well, when you first walk in, you see wonderful volunteers because we couldn't do
Thank
our
you,
event without our
volunteers.
volunteers. And then we have a large signing room where all of the authors are sitting at tables. They have their books with them, and you get to just peruse the books and see what catches your interest, talk to the authors, and listen to them on panels and presentations and see if anything really piques your interest. And you can get those books signed there. There are other rooms that have the panels and presentations going on further along. It's really a fun atmosphere.
It really is a fun day. And of course, if you want to get a rundown on who's going to be there, what times they're going to be there, or when their panels are available, you can go to that website as well. That's thesokeybookfest.org. Now, if you don't have access to online, you can call.
They can certainly call me. I'll be happy to talk about books.
And that's
270-745-4502.
745-4502, and again, we'll put up that information. But now Barnes & Noble, I think this is beautiful because this is one of the biggest community collaborations that's out there, because we've got the library, we've got Barnes & Noble, the largest bookseller in this area, and then of course we've got WKU and we've got the Sokey Book Fest group that work together. Now she talked about you can go into this grand ballroom and there are all the authors at their tables right there. They've got their books, but those books are available through Barnes & Noble. Help us understand that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. We do all of the ordering. We, meaning Barnes & Noble, does all of the ordering for the book festival. We order all of the authors' books, titles, quantities, and set it all up so that when the patrons of the book festival arrive, they can just be wowed by the massive amounts of books that are in there, because there will be lots and lots of them.
Books, which you have to take out of the boxes and do those kinds of things. But then you can go, you can have the author sign it, and then go through a line. You can pay for the book, and boom, you're out of there.
Right,
You've got your signed
they'll go
book.
through the Barnes & Noble registers, and then as a company, we donate back to the book festival a portion of the proceeds from that day, which helps.
So
keep
say
it
I've
going.
got a book by an author at home. Do you discourage people from bringing those to
Yes,
the
we do.
book festival? Okay.
We are a sales event, we are a fundraiser, and it also would be confusing to try to keep track of what's been purchased before and what hasn't been. So we ask everybody to just get things signed, buy the things that they're going to have signed.
Buy them there on
Yes.
site. Let's talk a little bit about how, you know, you've been in the libraries for a long time, you've been in booksellers. How has the whole book publishing business changed over the years? Talk a little bit about that.
Huge, especially in the last 3 to 5 years. We've seen an epidemic growth in the ebook market. A lot of publishers with smaller named authors, maybe a first-time author, they're strictly doing ebook publishing at this time. And then based off the sales there, they're deciding whether or not to go into print or not. It's more feasible for publishers to do. Authors aren't always happy, but to me, there's nothing like a book.
Nothing like a book. You've seen
They
that too,
smell
Kristie.
so good.
They do. There's something about
I
the tactile,
know.
the whole experience of a book. But ebooks have really taken off, haven't
They are, and that's kind of terrifying, but you can't replace the experience that the Sokey Book Fest provides, which is meeting that author and talking to them about that book and having the book in hand while you do that.
Well, you know, earlier we were talking about how the publishers are kind of pushing certain authors and that kind of thing, but you have to take that into account too. It might be somebody that they want to
Right.
bring forward, but it may not be someone who suits. You know, in television we look at our demographics. We call it who's out there watching at what time and what can we offer them, you know, so that we can have this partnership. You kind of have to do that with the Book Fest too, right?
Definitely. When an author applies, if we haven't gone out searching for them, we definitely look at how we think their book will do, whether it will have appeal for our audience. Over the past 16 years, we've developed a knowledge of what our patrons will buy, so we have a pretty good idea of what works.
And do you accept, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and offering the diversification, making sure that we have enough of the genres covered, that we have enough history authors and biographies, that really it's an event for everybody. If you're a history buff, we're going to have your history books. If you like biographies, we're making sure we're covering all of them.
That's a good point. What about self-published? There's a lot more self-publishing going on. Do you accept that as well?
Well, there are, and we are working as a group, the Soki Book Fest group, to provide a showcase for those authors. And so typically we do mainstream publications and press because those are ones that are better known and well vetted and well reviewed. But that is a project that we're going to be taking on soon and showcasing their talents and their wares because they operate under a different set of guidelines. They don't always have the editing staff that the mainstream publishers do. So that is a growing segment, but that's not a large part of the Soki Book Fest at this point.
So, you know, as we sit here, we're talking about an amazing event, April 26th at the Carol Nicely Center, the Soki Book Fest, the Southern Kentucky Festival of Books. And we're talking about how we love books, we like the smell, we like the touch. Do you ever think in our lifetimes there will come a time when we won't have books?
No.
They said it here. No, you really don't anticipate that that's going to.
Well, taking a child and putting him or her to bed and getting to turn the pages slowly and to create momentum and to look and point and touch and feel and that whole square, rectangular, artistic piece that's right there. I use this for information and sometimes I use this for reading, but to have that experience with a child, and I can only imagine that if they have positive experiences in their youth, that will carry over and it will always be something that's an emotional experience for people, so we love it.
April 25th at the Carol Nicely Center in Bowling Green, and you can go online to the SokiBookFest.org to get more information. April 26th is the actual book festival for adults. 25th is the Children's Day, 26th the book festival. Anything, I'm going to leave, Jennifer, you have the last word.
Come out and see us. Get some
Just,
books.
it is a really wonderful event. Thanks a lot so much for all of you. Kristie Lowry for all your hard work, Jennifer Bailey, and of course Ashley Fowlkes. That's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Kentucky Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb. Thanks for joining us.